Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my September wrap up. Like, can you believe we're here already? Like, wow, it's already the 2nd of October, which is amazing. And we got some stuff to get through today. As always, I try to keep these monthly wrap ups short-ish. If you want to know about every single book that I read, because there was 62 of them, you can check out my weekly wrap-ups, which I always link in the card on these. I weekly do these very long wrap-ups where I talk in detail about what I like and didn't like about the books. This is my wrap-up and stats, so I'll talk about, the genres, the ratings, and then my top 5 reads. And then maybe something I want to start adding is just a thing of like the trends I saw in myself and like what was happening during the month, because I think that stuff is fun. So we're going to go ahead and get started, okay? Yeah, let's start with the stats. So I read 62 books. 2 of them were DNFs, which we'll get into, but there were 62 books that I read, which is awesome. I mean, I get down on myself, but if we look at August, it's pretty comparable this time. Let me see where I have it. Where do I have my August wrap up? Yeah, in August I read 60, but I had 3 DNFs, so 63 to 62. This is good. I think I'm finding kind of a new normal with what, like, my work-life balance will kind of be, because I've been getting through more, like, a book and a half every day, and then, like, making up for those, like, on the weekends where I'll, like, plow through a bunch, because I'm able quite freely to listen to audiobooks at work. But anyway, sorry, I'll keep going. There was 62 books. There was 443 pages, and this was about 643 pages per day. So anyway, what I was saying, I'm quite freely able to listen and then like read on my phone is what I've been doing a lot. So the formats that I did this in was I had 9 print books, and that will mean that they are like, are they print alone or am I reading along with them? No, I'm reading along with them usually, but there was 9 print books, 41 ebooks, which includes like Kindle and bot book, like KU and bot books, 28 audios, and 8 e-arcs. So yeah, that was good. That's about normal. I usually have about 10 to 12 arcs. There's going to be a lot in October. There's going to be a heck of a lot of those. So then the subgenres of romance of these were, I had 18 dark romance, 13 contemporary, 21 historicals. Like, compared to last month where I read 6. Like, I almost tripled how many historicals I read, which is bonkers, and I'm so happy. Like, it was wonderful. Sorry, again, I'm getting started. 2 fantasy romance, 1 mystery thriller horror, which is Empire of the Vampire. In my like breakdown, I don't really have a spot for what that book is because it's so many things. 3 paranormal, 1 sci-fi, and 1 other. And again, what was the other? I don't know, but it was something that didn't fit with everything else. And then the ratings for these were 2 DNFs, 4 6 stars, which were about half rereads, because I was rereading some comfort reads this month. 17 5 stars, 7 4.5 stars, 21 4 stars, 7 3.5 stars, 3 3 stars, and 1 2.5 star. So that was pretty nice. That's a pretty good range. I like that. Definitely more 5 stars than normal, which was great. Well, actually, I think last month was like not normal. So also, some of you always ask, so I thought this would be a cute time to show it because I'm never say never, but I'm doubtfully going to do a separate video on this. But someone asked me like what my journaling looks like. I've only recently started 2 different journals. So I kind of mentioned this in my weekly wrap up, but what I always have is one of these. I always have one of these going. This is the second one I've used. This was my first one, a cute little Sassenach one, that I started using last year. And I keep all of the books that I'm currently reading, my video ideas, recommendations from you. Not all of them. Those are now kept in my book form. But like when I have live chats with people, I like write down video ideas in these. So this one is book number 1 and this one is book number 2. So this is what goes with me everywhere. Like it gets pretty beat up. I love this because it has a little pen holder. So I literally have this in my purse all the time. And if I get a video idea or when I finish reading a book, like I'll show you October. So I just put these little sticker tabs in here. The green flags are video ideas. And then this is like my October reads. And so I put the books that I've read and I just list them in their rating here. Pretty bougie, okay? Like, I'm kidding. I don't even know what that word means. Pretty basic is what I meant, not bougie. Bougie, I think, is the opposite of basic, right? But I have a whole stock of these notebooks by DesignWorks. I freaking love them. I'm obsessed with them. But this is currently the only one that I had. And then I had like some random notebooks that I've started. Like I have a big one that I use for like planning if I have a readathon or anything like that. I'll like have a big one. But anyway, so recently what I started, and this one I definitely talked about in my weekly wrap up, which should be up already, where I started a journal that is going to have all of my favorite books ever. So all of my 6-star reads, and it may have some 5-star reads that I think are notable in it as well. But for now, it's just 6-star books. So the first one in here is The Takeover. And then I just write like when I read it, who published it, you know, it's a favorite read of 2020. And then which, you know, how it fits. And then the characters, because I'm horrible at remembering character names. And for my favorite books, I want to remember the characters. And then tropes, which I'm using the fun little trope stickers or writing in what the tropes are. So I have all of my favorite books in there. It's super basic. I'm not really like tracking it except for that. And then I will write like my thoughts on it. Like there's some that I filled out. See, I hate writing that, but like I took a picture of it for Sophie. So like I did the stolen heir and broken vow and I filled out my thoughts so that if I come back to it years later, I'll have it. So there's this one. Then I have this kind of like goofy one that I bought it because it was on sale at Barnes & Noble. I really don't like these stickers because it doesn't fit my aesthetic, so I may peel those off and like write it. But this one just has some fun stickers on it. There's some ones from In Love and Words. This was from Gianna Darling, and it has these like stickers in it for, you know, journaling, but they're kind of like ugly because whatever. And so then I have a page for my stats. So this is Instagram stats. This is Booktube stats for my goals, right? So the next big goal is going to be 15K. That's intimidating, but I know we can do it. And then I have like my 6-star books like listed this way. So it's like a quick view. And then this is what I'm basically what this book will be for, is for TBRs and like my wrap up stats. And then the like stats for my channel, because I'm not planning to buy the Inkling Designs planner next year, just because I loved it, but this current year it was basically useless to me. I don't plan my videos that way, and I read way more books than that book can sustain. So, you know, for each book you read, they want you, you know, there's certain details you're writing out, and like I just can't put that level into it or it wouldn't work. So basically, like, I use my Google Calendar for planning events. So this is mostly going to be for pretty things. And then some fun lists. Like, I have a Lisa Kleypas reading list. Those are all, like, the ones that I need to read. So it's, like, it has the space for stuff as it, like, pops up. So there's, like, my August wrap-up. This was before I was getting pretty. Like, that's the thing, too. I have no skills. That's why I don't, like, show these to people. But then, like, I have my October TBR where I am, like, crossing them out as I read them because I've read some already. And see, I wrote a lot nicer for those ones. And then, like, here's the September TBR, which I did this on a sticky note, so I said. So, or September wrap-up. This one I did a little more color-coded, and it's pretty. So, I just wanted to show you guys that. Like, I don't really show an in-detail one because it's a hot mess when I do it. But people ask, and, I mean, I've always tracked, for the last year and a half, I've done books read, the formats, the subgenres, and my ratings. Those are the things that are most important for this wrap-up. And then I just put the little spot for my favorites. And then the plan is to, well, I mean, they're not always going to be 6-star books. But if it's a 6-star book, it will get a full page in that book. with all the tropes and everything. And the other ones, I'll just talk about them. So anyway, I hope that is something you liked. If you really want a separate video, I could do it, but it literally would be the 5 minutes that this just was, so I don't know. But I know because I read so many books, people think I have like a better plan for it. The other thing I do use is there's this Google form that I enter all my books into. I create a new one for each month. I just copy it and do it because I read 68 books a month. So I wanted each month to be separate. But I think it was created by Black Book Chicks. I'll check. But they had this Google form and I just adapted it for myself. And so as you enter it, then you can create a spreadsheet, and that's where I like track all my page numbers that I pull for this. So it's a combination of stuff. I can't promise that I'll never get tired doing this. That's why the only things I'm for sure putting in this book is the TBRs and the wrap-ups. And then if I want to add other cute little stuff, I can. But that way this book should last me a pretty long time, because this one is just for, and this is kind of just like the dump journal. Like I put every book that I read is in here. And then my ideas and the videos, because like here's an example of a video. This is literally what it looks like. What I'll do is when I get a bunch of ideas from you guys, like I'll put up a post where I'm like, hey, give me some ideas. And the ones that I like, I'll just start flipping through. So I'll write, okay, people wanted more Mafia Rex. People wanted books with tiny heroes. And so then I make 10 boxes, because I try to do at least 10 recommendations in every video. That's something that I've done for years now. I want there to be like 10 recs, because so often when I would watch a rec video, there'd be like 5 books. And if I've read 3 of the books, then I felt like I didn't get a lot out of it. So I don't make a video until I have at least 10 recommendations. So that's also something where people are like, oh my gosh, I want a rec for choking. Just an example. And I'm like, okay, so I will write a tab that says, taboo books with choking. And then until I have enough to fill the video, it just sits in here. Like I have a couple that are half done. Let me see if I can find one as an example. I don't know if I have one. Okay, like this one. Okay, this one I ended up filming, but like you can see this one where I had like empty gaps. I wasn't ready to like do this video, but I ended up doing it because it was a really specific trope, so I didn't need to have 10 for that one. So anyway, sorry that we just took a side journey into that, but I thought it'd be cool because people ask me, particularly because on Instagram I've been showing pictures of this stuff now, and then people are like, oh, do a video, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't like have enough to say to like do that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Okay. Let's get into my top 5 books. I took a long enough time. I do, again, want to give an honorable mention. I talk about this book in more detail in my weekly wrap-up, but if this book had romance, it would be 6 stars, and that's Empire of the Vampire. I made it my way through this tome in September. It took me 2 weeks, which for me is a long time, and I loved this, but it's not a romance, it doesn't have an HEA, and there's a lot of tragedy in it. But if you're a fan of J. Kristoff, or you're a fan of like bloody vampire stuff and like horror and like that, like this was so good. And it is like fully illustrated. That's a bad picture. Like it is fully illustrated, which is great. But it's not in my top 5 because it's not a romance and I just can't do it. So let's go ahead. All right, the books that I am giving some time in this video are Annie's Song by Katherine Anderson. So I've gushed about this in a couple videos, and I still have one more video where I'm gushing about it again. So if you don't know, if you haven't heard, this book came out in 1996. This is a Western. This is a age gap, kind of arranged marriage with a heroine who is deaf. She went deaf at the age 6. She's considered to be touched in the head or whatever. The R word is used in this book. Number 1, because it was written in 1996, and number 2, that's what they would have said in the, I don't remember the year this was in, but in the time that this was made, this is what they would have said, because she was sick when she was young and she lost her hearing. Not all levels of hearing though. So anyway, she is 20 years old, and in the beginning of this book, she gets raped It is not a graphic depiction, but you will know that it happens. So there's that. Thankfully, it's not graphic in this one. And then our hero is the older brother of the disgusting pig who raped this girl. And when he finds out what happened, his name is Alex, he goes to her family and offers for her, because he's like, if there's a baby, I want to take care of her. Even if there's not, I want to take care of her. And her family's like, no. We don't want anyone to know about her. They're very concerned about their reputation. And then 4 months later, we find out for sure that she's pregnant. Her mom was kind of ignoring the signs. She was like, oh, her period isn't always regular and all this stuff. But then they noticed the swell in her belly. And so they call Alex back and they're like, what are we going to do? And he's like, I'll marry her and take her to my home. I want to raise my niece or nephew. And if she is not mentally able to do that, I will keep the baby and send her back to you when it's done. So, lots of problems with this setup, right? The thing that makes this work is that our hero is a prince. He is delicious and sweet. Sorry, delicious is the wrong thing to say first. But he is so sweet and honorable. He is horrified what happened. He cannot believe that his brother, who he raised, could be such a spoiled, disgusting human. And he is horrified that anything he have done could have led to this. And he also feels horrible that he's having sexual feelings towards this girl who we believe has issues. Which she does have issues, because she's been mistreated and her family thought she was crazy, so they treated her accordingly. And so she has a lot of things. And Alex goes about learning as much as he can about her and what's happening to her, and he goes about finding ways to expand her world. She can hear certain frequencies, so he buys her every instrument in the sales catalog. He noticed that she loves animals, so he puts her around them all the time. He wants her to be able to speak, so he starts learning sign language so he can teach her. Everything he does becomes revolved around her and widening her world, and then maybe seeing if they could have a real marriage, because, she's not crazy. She is a woman. She does have woman's desires. This book is so beautiful. I also gushed on it on the Read My Lips podcast, which is done by my beautiful friend Tara. She's had me on there 4 times now, and this last time I talked about Annie's song, and that podcast should be up on either Sunday night or Monday, so you should be able to watch that. That one was a 5-star book for me, by the way. A 6-star read for me was Midnight Pleasures with a Scoundrel. This is book 4 in the Scoundrels of St. James series, and this book knocked my socks off, okay? I'd been reading this series since the previous month. It was some of the only historicals that I read in August, because I read In Bed with the Devil, which is the first one. And this is kind of like, it has like Oliver Twist, like the guy who raised them is literally called Fagin, and Charles Dickens is actually in this story throughout, like not a huge part, but it is strongly believed in the book that he wrote Oliver Twist based on the characters in here. There's even like an Artful Dodger, there's Jack Dodger and everything. This one is about James Swindler, who is a cop basically, and Eleanor Watkins, who has come to town to get revenge for her sister, who killed herself, and we believe it's the fault of this one guy. Like, he basically drove her to suicide for assaulting her. It's very strongly hinted at that's what happened. And she left her diary behind for her sister to find. Well, not purposely for her to find, but they figured out what happened, and so they go to London. She goes to London to try to figure out what happened. And it includes kind of tricking James in a certain aspect. And when he finds out what happened, he feels pretty betrayed because he's had a lot of strong feelings for her. I'm sorry, I'm trying to not spoil this book because there's some huge twists in this book, the way that Lorraine Heath is wont to do. So I'm trying not to spoil this. But the way that the way that it's revealed to him, and the way that he feels betrayed but also still wants her so much, it's so good. And I don't know, this one just really, really worked for me. And obviously I gave it 6 stars, and I think it really is part of like the whole series was amazing too. I've given some 4 and 5 stars in the series, but this one, I was just, somehow I wasn't spoiled for this. I had no idea what was going on. And I just loved it. I loved it. So I gave it 6 stars. I don't know what else to say. Like, this one was so good. Lorraine Heath. I continue to try to read her books, and I'm always nervous to read them, and I'm always like, wow, she pulled that off. So that's what I have to say about the queen here. Then Relentless Hunter by Maggie Cole. This was a 6-star book. I don't have too much to say about this one because this one doesn't come out until January 1st. So I can't say that much. This is book 10 and will be the final book in the Mafia Wars. And I tell you, when Maggie gave this to me, I was like, Maggie is, I would consider her a friend at this point. And the work she put into this book, which she was nervous to give to me because she does know a few of my pet peeves. Like, she's just heard me mention them before. And this book has a couple of them. Okay, this book takes place over 21-year time. This book has domestic slavery and rape in it. And it is heartbreaking. And Maggie told me, she's like, I'm scared and excited for you to read this. She's like, I cried all the way through while I was writing this book. It is like gut-wrenching. It was hard not only to leave the series, but to tell this story of Brenna, who we've been hearing about Brenna for the last few books, because she's very important to the O'Malley family, and we don't know what happened to her. And we get some tidbits in a previous book about what happened, and we get to see Brenna when she was young and when she met Finn. And then if you've read one of the previous books, you know that Finn was in prison for something, and when he gets out, he is like, I'm gonna find Brenna. So that's all I can really say about this one, but it definitely lived up to being an end of the series. And gosh, reading Mafia Wars the last, I mean, I guess like almost 6 months has been amazing. Like, watching Maggie like just bust these books out and tell these amazing stories. Some of these books, you know, Savage, specifically, I guess the end of both of the arcs, like Savage Tracker and Relentless Hunter, they just have moved me so much. And it's everything I love about a dark romance and mafia and gut-wrenching stories all wrapped into one. And Maggie Cole is going to be like, she still has so many books of hers I could read too. Like, I'm just being honest. I've really only read the Mafia Wars and one of her other books, but she's on my favorite author list because of how the Mafia Wars made me feel. So if you haven't started those books yet, they start with Ruthless Stranger. Jeez, I just forgot. And they're so powerful and wonderful. Like, honestly, they're great. And there are some misses in the series for me. You know, I've said this. There are certain ones that feel repetitive to me, and I feel like she didn't have as inspired a story to tell. But then they're the ones that hit so hard that they overall make this series a super positive thing for me. So there you go. Then another one I want to highlight is The Devil is a Marquess by Elisa Braden. I had to highlight Elisa Braden this month just because, man, she's the reason that I read so many historicals this month because of her. Because 11 of the 21 historicals I read this month were hers. And she's such an interesting mix of storytellers. Like, she will go dark, but they're also clever. They're very sexy. And even the ones that are not my favorite are really good. And I love when I find an author like that where you're like, wow, this story wasn't for me, but I still had a great time with it. And specifically Devil is a Marquess, it hits some of my favorite things because we have a hero who is a drunkard and he's like lost everything. And then we have our heroine who is the daughter of like a self-made man, and he wants his daughter to be titled and he wants to have a grandchild who's titled. Like, that is his thing. And so he makes a deal with this Marquess that you'll marry my daughter, you'll stay married to her for a year, and you'll get 100,000 pounds. And if in that year you produce a child with her, like if she's pregnant by the end of this and I'm going to have like an heir to my fortune, you'll get another $100,000. Now, our heroine, she knows about the upfront parts of this, but she doesn't know about the baby part of it. And she doesn't want to have a baby during this year because she wants to take her portion of the money at the end and go to America and open an antique shop, basically. Something like that. But she agrees in this. And so she doesn't know about the second half of it. And so in the beginning, our Marquess is fine with it. He's like, well, 100,000 pounds is still going to be good. And they have to live up. But the father is not going to give him anything until they stick it through. Like, he gives him some in the front, and he's like, you have to make your land work in this year. And so our heroine, she's a go-getter. She's great at that. So they go to his estate and they start putting it back together. And this hero, in some ways, not a lot, but in some ways reminded me of West Ravenel, who he was like a playboy and a rake in the beginning. And he works hard. He actually, like, his body works hard too. Like, he gets fit and strong. And I love seeing that. Like, our hero, he's kind of a doughboy. Like, he's beautiful, but he's a drunkard and a partier. So, like, he doesn't have the body of a god, okay? He does not. He has the body of a frat boy who drinks too much, you know? Or dad bod or whatever, which dad bod isn't bad. But through working the fields, which becomes his, like, release. Because, you know, he goes through withdrawals. I mean, I hate reading about that, but I love it because it's real and raw and it's a thing. And he goes through all of that. And I loved it. I did. The conflict, like, you know it's coming, you know it's happening, but it worked for me because of how they, like, handled it at the end and how our hero was like, no, I'm not going to let you leave me. Which I won't spoil all of it, but this was 5 stars. I loved it. And then the last one I want to talk about, I want to highlight, is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartmann. This was me kind of jumping the gun, right? Like, this was an October TBR read. Like, you can even see, here's my October TBR, and there's Still Beating. Oop, there's Still Beating, and I read it. But I ended up buying the audiobook, and when I fully heard what this book was about, I was just like, that's the book I'm starting off my spooky season with. And it isn't spooky, but it is horror in a way. Like, this would literally be a horror movie if it was. Our heroine and hero. So here we go. Our heroine and the hero. Okay. The hero is our heroine's future brother-in-law. He's been dating her sister for 15 years. They've known each other since high school. He's been kind of a bully. He's teased her. She hates him. She thinks he hates her. And they're actually at their, like, engagement party for, you know, her sister and him. And she ends up staying at the bar later and getting really drunk. And then there's someone trying to pick her up. And she is like, no. Well, her wallet gets stolen, so she can't get a cab. So she calls and no one answers. And then she calls the hero and he answers. And he gets out of bed and comes to pick her up, which was a really nice thing to do. And they end up running into this guy who is really creepy. And then they start heading home and they get pulled over by a cop who ends up being that creepy guy. And he kidnaps them both. And they wake up in a basement tied to 2 different sides of the basement. And we're in for a horror show that involves not only the man doing horrible things to our heroine, but our hero being forced to do things as well. So this book covers the during time and the after time. This book deals with suicidal thoughts and attempted suicide. This obviously deals with rape and just horrible things. But it was so beautiful, like, honestly. And the Still Beating is this beautiful moment where when they're trapped there for what feels like endless days, our hero tells her, he's like, do you feel that? Do you feel that? As long as it's still beating, we have hope. Like, we're still alive. And it's really beautiful. This book doesn't have cheating, even though what I said, like, you'll see if you read it, like, there are definitely, you know, feelings that happen when they're still engaged because there's stuff going on, but I didn't feel like it was cheating. And honestly, pretty much everything that happened in this book, like, it's ugly, it's painful, it's supposed to be. I feel like it needed to happen the way it did, and so I didn't really, like, I just went along with it. Like, it felt so real. Like, it felt so real. And maybe it's because I'm kind of a true crime junkie as well as, like, so I've literally heard I've heard stories of people being held captive. I've never heard of this scenario, but it was amazing. So, yeah. Okay, well, that was a little longer than normally my monthly wrap-ups are, but I did want to share with you, you know, about my journals and how I do things and everything. September was a great month. I'm very excited for October. As you might have seen, I've already read a couple of my October books, and I'm excited for spooky season and everything that's going on. So thank you so much for watching this video. It means so much to me. If you would like and subscribe to this, leave a comment if you have a question about something or whatever. And yeah, I hope you have a great day.